And we have Naomi Marinelli from DESPP. Is that correct?
Yeah, she's on. I don't know if she's on mute.
Naomi, can you hear us okay? Naomi?
Not responding.
That's strange because she was able to talk in the beginning of the meeting. Let me send her a message really quick.
We can see her pretty clearly.
Can you hear us at all?
Yes.
Okay.
And do we have anyone from A&R with us?
Did DeSetti get invited?
Yes. Huh.
Yes, join. I got a little. So that's either Al or DeSetti or both of them.
Do we have anyone from A&R with us?
I think since we have a quorum, we should get started.
Agreed.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, we were thinking the same thing. I started the transcription and that stuff, so we can get going. So we'll get started at 10:07. I'll write that down.
Now, Bob had conveyed that he is unable to attend today, so the chair, who's chair of the committee, so I wasn't sure if the committee members wanted to either elect to have someone on an interim basis or for the purpose of this meeting serve as a temporary chair to conduct this meeting, or in the alternative, because we have a quorum, elect to move forward with the meeting, or so I throw that out there just for purposes of moving forward.
I make a motion that Sal chair this meeting for just the purposes of this meeting. If anyone else wants to second that.
Well, that would only be me, right? So it's fine with me.
All right.
Let's just move forward
Okay.
ASAP.
Okay. I don't know if the staff want to start in terms of looking at this and give us a quick thumbnail on the facts and what they see in terms of in terms of what's came in as an initial complaint and then looks like a contracting out.
I took down some notes. As I think all of you saw, there's a lot of documents that have kind of gone around. So I guess the notes that I had really kind of point out that there seems to be one side of the story and then another side of the story, and then at times there seems to be conflicting information there. So I guess I don't really have investigative powers, or the staff doesn't have investigative powers, so it's hard for us to.
Fine. I was more thinking of facts, in terms of looking at certain factual things and doing it that way. But I guess I can try to give an interpretation in terms of what I see, and then maybe maybe the agency can respond, or the union. It looks like what came in as a complaint that that the agency has contracted out work that was done by the union. And then it looked like the agency said, well, they're not really doing the work, they're just doing training. From there, it looked like the SETI said training. The work order that they contracted with the outside agency doesn't even mention training. And then the newest thing it looks like that we got from the agency today is that they agree that they are in fact doing the audits as well. So it seems like a prima facie case of contracting out. And
Did you say we got something today?
yeah, I know we're not supposed to, but I guess the agency
What did we
just
get today? I didn't see it.
looks like it looks like an admission that they are actually doing audits from the agency.
There's also
No.
the statement of work that was included that Greg sent around when he sent around the initial meeting materials. It says right in there, that's exactly what this is that they're here to do the audits, to
Okay,
assist
well,
the
I don't
staff.
have anything from today, so I don't know what you're referring to. I have something from December 8th that has the SOW language, staff, etc. What are you talking about today? Like, I haven't seen anything, so.
I believe around about 9:13 this morning, Versi Jones, who's the employee who initially, I think on August 24th, she had, was it August or September, early September, raised the complaint with the board. She sent some materials to us early this morning.
I don't have it.
Jonathan,
It's,
your hand raised and I can't see who it is. I don't know if
that's Versi.
That's
Oh.
Percy, right?
okay, Percy, do you have something to add? You have your hand raised.
Yes, the finalized audit process that the contractor configured, that was not finalized until yesterday. And we started sending out audits using the contractor's audit process. So I could not determine nor provide you with, hey, this is what they're doing and this is what we do and we have historically done until that process was finalized. So it happened yesterday after that 10 a.m. deadline.
Mhm.
So I provided a listing of the audit responses from the FBI that indicates sanctions, which there's not really a sanction because I've always been really good with the audits. And I also provided again, the FBI audit reports. I also provided the list of what the state police employees did, plus what the auditor's process is. It is a duplicate process. And I also provided a copy or sample of the audit information that we send out, which is very similar to the stuff that we sent out yesterday. And I also provided a redacted version of an audit report, which is exactly what the people permit software does. So everything that the contractor has configured is exactly what we have always performed. And that's what I provided this morning. And I also provided the language from the FBI that actually says what the audit findings are and the responses that I submitted to the FBI. That is recorded and it is available at the FBI APB and at the Compact Council Sanctions Committee. And I must say that the Sanctions Committee, they review the audits. It doesn't mean that your state is being sanctioned. They are the committees that review the audit responses. So just because we are before the Sanctions Committee, everybody goes before the Sanctions Committee, whether your audits have no finding or whether your audits have finding. everybody goes before the sanctions committee.
Thank you, Versi. That was very helpful.
So if I may, Sal,
Sure.
looking at the 4E16 language, the first priority is for us to determine whether or not this constitutes a privatization. Have we determined if this service was being done in whole or part already by a private organization for the agency? And I think that we have discussed this previously and that this is a new service that's being provided. If I remember the life history of this contract, it was they were already contracting with this company and then added additional work. Does that sound correct, or am I?
That's my understanding too.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
that's accurate, we need to know that ASAP.
Right. And
So
so I
DES
think
was already contracting with Diverse Computing and they just added additional work. Is that what you're saying?
yes. So they contracted with Diverse Computing for something else and then added onto their existing contract
Okay.
to do this additional work. So
Okay.
my concern with this is, this would be a method for agencies to get around the privatization. Like they're saying they're already using the agency, but maybe not for this scope of work. So we got to be careful about expanding contracts that are already set. So I think my thought, and if the rest of the committee wants to agree, this portion of work has not been previously privatized. Is that the finding we're making?
That's what it looks like. Two people.
Well, I'm
have
not saying, I'm not agreeing that it's actual privatization. I mean, I'm not even, the threshold question is this a privatization? Am I right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And we
Greg
determine that by whether.
Or John?
Yeah, I talked about it in the beginning, Brenda. It's a challenging scenario, right? Because we have a lot of documents from both sides, and I think there's a lot of conflict there. Some people say
Yeah.
we're not doing auditing. Some other groups are saying they are doing auditing. I don't know. And
Sorry, Lauren, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no problem. And
Sorry.
so it is a tricky situation because, right, there does appear to be some kind of overlap. I would make the argument that it does constitute a privatization if, the work had not previously been being done by a private organization. So this is new work for a private organization. But in addition, if you look at the actual wording of that statement of work, it talks specifically about doing the audits. So it's very clear that, it's not, they're doing something slightly different. Just the fact that they are doing work that previously was not being done by a private organization constitutes a privatization.
So it would constitute a privatization by saying anything that it assists an agency is now privatization? If you're assisting staff of an agency in doing the work that they're currently doing?
Right. So no, right. And that's what makes this tricky, because this looks like it's supplanting what current state employees are doing, which is what Mrs. Jones' complaint is, right? Is that her core functions have now been stripped away because this private contractor is pretty much taking over her work substantially, where they are creating the tools, they are creating the software, they're administrating the software, all of that, the work, the training, they're doing it in place of her. And it sounds like she's doing more perfunctory functions as opposed to the core functions of creating those audit tools and reviewing the material. And I hope I didn't misrepresent that, but that's what I'm understanding.
Didn't, Lauren. And one of the things that the agency's response is that they're not really doing the work; they're doing training. It was the president of A&R who pointed out in a letter, if you looked at it, that the contract with the agency doesn't mention training at all.
Diverse Computing's contract.
Mm-hmm. So
it doesn't, yeah.
And so then the question is, if they're doing the audit, which looks like they are, then it seems to be a prima facie case of privatization.
I would agree.
I don't agree, but it's all right. I'm not clear. Well, I don't think you should laugh at me, Sal. I don't understand. I'm trying to understand this, right? And I don't necessarily agree that this is privatization. There was some discussion about somewhere where I read that there was a backlog, and I know that the person who complained originally doesn't agree with that. So I've seen many times where agencies have brought in entities to assist, which isn't taking over the functions of what the person or what the people are doing. It's to get rid of certain backlogs. And that was going to be my next question. Somewhere in this material, a lot of material, I read that there was assistance being done to take care of a backlog or something along those lines. So I don't know if someone can address that. I'd like to hear from the agency, if possible as well.
So, but I would also like to hear from the agency, as I understand that this is the justification being used was that there was something like 800 audits that needed to be performed in Ms. Jones's complaint. She claims that the backlog is overstated and that the existing staff are able to handle it, and that there are other circumstances that had led to this. But I think it would be good to hear from the agency through the chair.
And to your point, Lauren, therein lies, I guess, the question, right? It goes back to what John said originally. There's a lot of back and forth and a lot of information, and in some cases it's contradictory, et cetera. So I don't know what the answer is.
I agree, and I think zooming out from the situation, I would want to understand the board's purview over form and function, right? Even if we decide that, so we say this is not a privatization, but just by the form of it, but in reality, we are having state employees who are sidelined and kind of just sitting on their hands while a contractor performs their function. Would we then call it a privatization, even though on paper it doesn't look like it, but in reality, that's how it's functioning? I think that's Sal's point. And so what is the board's purview over instances where that's occurring? Because the concern would be then that state agencies are finding ways to retain their state employees on staff, but substantially reducing the work that they are doing or replacing the work with contractors. I think that's really what we're trying to understand here is where does the board go in a situation where on its face it may or may not be privatization, but in reality, the complaint coming from the state employees is that yes, they are being effectively relegated to the sidelines for their job functions.
So
But
I think the question is, one, are they doing audits, right? So maybe we can get a definitive answer on that. It looks like they are doing audits, and I'm waiting for somebody to tell me that they're not. Because if they are doing audits, then it's privatization by definition. And the concern, I think, from the union's point of view, is that if they've never done this work before and they're doing it now, then in the future they can shared work, and that changes the entire argument around privatization. So are they doing? I think we should have the first issue is
Breaking up.
can you put yourself on mute if you're not speaking for a second?
Who's the unknown user?
Okay. So I think that's the first threshold question is, are they doing audits? The contracted. And is the agency going to answer that question, or? It looks like they're not going to address it.
Well,
My name's Naomi Marinelli. I'm the Assistant Chief of Fiscal. I'm in place of Ami Plord, who is the Chief of Fiscal, who made the original response on December 8th. But I don't have the answer to that question. I would need some time to review that.
can I ask a question, Sal?
Sure.
Were we intending to have this meeting to determine a direction our subcommittee goes in, and also allow representatives of the union and the agency to have a conversation with us to help us better understand, right? Is that, I mean, I know we can make a decision just by talking amongst ourselves, but there's a lot of information and not every answer is being answered. So was our intent to hear from DESP and hear from the union before we make an informed recommendation? And that's my question.
No, exactly, Brenda. I think
Yeah.
the purpose of today's meeting was to try to gather as many facts as we can.
I mean, I know we've done that before, right? We've done that before many times as a subcommittee where we've brought in the organizations to try and clarify. This is, and no disrespect to anybody, it's just, I understand your point, it's just confusing. So to your question, are audits being performed? What is the answer, right? And that's again, that goes back to a threshold answer, am I right? So
this came to us from an employee who not really didn't have standing in terms of the fact that she wasn't speaking for the union, but the union did get involved, and now they claim that it's that the contracted agency is doing audits performed solely by state employees. And it looks like that's the case, but the responding agency is saying that they don't have an answer, which is not fair to the agency. The agency knew about this meeting and should have come with an answer. I'm not blaming Naomi. If she says she doesn't know and she can get back to us and find out, then we have to leave it at that. And maybe come back.
And then can I just add, Sal, the whatever the information, which I don't have, whatever the information is that was sent by the complainant yesterday or this morning at 9 something, I don't have it. Is that additional information that we need to flesh out further and hear, because this is something that the employee has stated and additional information she's provided, which is fine, but what's the response to that? Like, and I haven't even seen it, so I'm a little lost.
Well, she's from the beginning, she's complained that the agency has contracted work that was done by state employees. The new information just simply seems to verify that. The agency already has a credibility problem from the point of view that they stated initially that the contracted agency was only doing training. We know from prima facie, from the contract itself, that there's no training involved in the contract. And that hasn't been addressed by the agency. So right now, I would say the credibility issue really lies with the agency, not with the complainant or with the union at this point.
And so I'll say the question of, well, are they actually doing audits? In this particular case, because the statement of work is solely surrounding having the contractor do audits, I don't think it matters. Like, they are being contracted to do audits. So that's the privatization that happened, allegedly, is auditing.
Right.
And
right. And
if they're saying, well, they're actually doing training, well, that's not what your contract says. So now you're kind of in hot water on two fronts, right? Like you're doing something that's not in the contract, and you're contracting for something that is a, bargaining unit work. So I think that whole thing is a moot point. I feel like we've kind of beat that to death. They're doing audits. They're contracted to do audits. The way that they're actually executing on it, is it in an assistance function, or is it taking over the entirety of the state employees' roles? That's more the question I want to get at. Was that the intent of this contract?
And Lauren, there's an additional piece that if they are having the contracted people doing bargaining unit work, then was a 4E16P done? And I think,
well, we know it wasn't.
That's right. So that's another violation in my mind.
So I think for our determination and our next steps, so we're actually having forward movement here. I would say the committee needs to decide, like make a vote. Do we consider this a privatization? And yes or no. Determining from there, if we say yes, that would require that the agency perform those steps that are laid out in 4E16, which includes that cost benefit analysis. And then they'd have to go pretty much and justify why they think that that's necessary. If we want to do any more fact determination, what I would be interested in knowing is whether or not the state employees that have been hired and trained for this work, if they are actually doing it, have they been reassigned, have their job scopes been reduced? And that, I think that would speak more to whether or not this is an assistance contract or a replacement contract.
Since this is a subcommittee, whatever we decide, we'd have to bring to the full group. And so
Mhm.
at this point, I would recommend to the full group that this is privatization. I think there's time between now and next Friday. If Naomi wants to, if she, can look at this and give us some kind of proof that that's not the case, there's time between now and next Friday. I just think that the agency is kind of wasting our time. Not Naomi, but the agency itself, for not being able to tell us this morning their version of what they think is going on. Because it's, from my perspective, it's pretty clear from the complainant and from the union that this is bargaining unit work that they're doing. So
I
maybe
agree.
we could hold a vote. And that is, at this point, do we agree that it looks like the contracted agency is doing audits performed by state employees?
Yes.
So moved.
That's-
I agree.
So Al, you vote yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I agree with you.
Lauren,
I agree with you. Yes.
Brenda,
Nope.
hey,
Could
well,
we
Well-
ask that the agency provide justification from their perspective of why this is not replacing or reducing bargaining unit work?
Well, if we've already voted that we think it's privatization,
Oh, I
are
think
we
it is.
saying we're going to meet again?
no, we look, it looks like the vote is that the subcommittee believes it's privatization. Naomi is stating that it looks like she's the stunt man today, that they've asked her to come in for the agency, but she doesn't have any information.
Mm.
And so, I don't want to put it on her, but I do want to put it on the agency that if they have contradictory information, that that the agency is not contracting the work, that
Yeah.
there is time between now and the full meeting next
Yep.
Friday, that we can then look at it and then the full board can vote.
Yep. Okay.
Right. My
Makes
interest in
sense.
it again.
Makes
So
sense.
remember when we did I think it was for the Department of Consumer Protection, they needed to hire a couple extra attorneys to go through their trials. We said, yeah, it's a privatization, but in this case, the state absolutely needs it and we can kind of go with it for now. I don't see why if that we can't make a similar determination here. I don't think there's the downstream impact will necessarily be changing anything about the existing contract. It's just, again, getting our heads around what's really happening.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're acting on what's before us.
It looks like Versi, you have your hand up. She has.
I can't hear Al either.
You hear me now?
Can
barely.
you hear Al? I can't.
Can you use your
No.
outdoor voice, Al?
You can, whoever hears me can send it on to the others, but I think what we've given been given so far, we're taking the proper action, subject to change. That's
Al said, given what he sees in terms of the information that was passed along, that that's what it looks like, that is contracted out. For those
Is
that
that-
couldn't hear.
Is that what you said, Al?
yeah, yeah.
He said, yes.
No,
Through Sal.
I'm agreeing with the group that.
Make a statement now based on what we've got.
Oh, my,
Oh, no. I think he should be muted.
this is not happening.
I'm sorry.
Al, you're not coming through. Al.
No, I hear. I don't know how to change it.
I think you're
I've never seen it change someone's voice like that before. That was really interesting. Unfortunately, Al, we had to mute you, but maybe we'll unmute you now. Oh, I can't unmute, but maybe you might be able to come back on and try it again. I don't know.
You read the text, he was agreeing with the group that said that he believed that the agency was contracting out. He also said it was based on the evidence that of everything that he's seen.
Sounds
Can I
good.
just also interject? Is there more information? And I know that Versi has indicated something differently about this notion of, is there a backlog? Is there not a backlog? Is it a several year backlog? I mean, I'd like to see more of what the agency has to say about that. And just FYI, I don't know if there's a way to obtain additional information on that, so.
Well, I think he understands what we're looking for now, even if she doesn't have the information. So she has until, or the agency has until we meet next Friday. Hopefully, it's not sent Friday morning.
Right.
For us
Right.
to, if there's an
Yep.
alternative decision that we end up reaching. But right now,
Yep.
I think we took a vote. We believe it's contracting out. That's the recommendation. If we don't get any new information, that's the recommendation we will make next Friday at the full board meeting. The agency has an ability to respond. They can respond or not. If they send us something, we'll look at it. But right now, that's where we are.
Okay.
And
No, of course, sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to remind us that we still have Versi Jones who would like to comment as well.
Sure. Versi, go ahead.
Yes, so I did provide the list of audits. At the time that the contract was signed back in August, there were only about 600 audits that had to be done. Now, our unit can do 600 and more audits in 30 days. We did 2 state audits using the same software in March and April of that year. We also utilized and leveraged the same software to do our site surveys and also to take in requests to give police departments additional terminals. So we know how to use the audit. We know how to use the credit report. I trained them so that they can use it. The peak performance software, which is the auditing software, that has allowed us to digitize our audit process. That's all it does, is digitize the audit process. These contractors from Diverse Computing, they are creating additional audit reports. Initially, they were hired to perform the audits. Once I submitted the complaint to the state contracting board, then their mission changed because I submitted the complaint. So again, they were always going to do the audit, they were going to take over, and the audit cycles were already established. We are in the 2021 to 2024 audit cycle. That's a current audit. That is not a back audit. The back audits are 2017 to 2020. There were only 600 back audits that were left at the time this contract was signed. The manager of that unit who wanted to sign the contract, they put that there was 15,000 back audits in order to make the agency feel like it had to go into a contract for $100,000. So the state police signed a contract for $100,000 to so-called train 6 individuals to use a system that they were already using. We've always created our own reports. We've always performed our own audit schedule. We've always done everything from scheduling the audits to completing the audits. The only thing now, because again, the complaint has been filed, the only thing this agency is now doing is creating the audit reports. They create a different version of our audit reports. That's it. We already had all other versions of the audit reports available. They were already being used by the employees, and $100,000 to train 6 people to use software, it's crazy. There was never 15,000. And what I provided to the board this morning was the 2014 FBI clearance that everything was closed out. I provided the 2017 audits that everything was closed out. So the indication that there were 15,000 back audits is false and is fraudulent. There were only 600 at the time of the contract signage. In December of 2022, we had a recorded meeting where I reviewed a larger number of back audits, what we had to do to get the audits out. That was only at 2,500 audits, all right? At the most, 2,500 audits. We had a meeting, it was recorded. It was never 15,000. That was only to make the agency feel like it had to enter into this contract. The person who provided the information provided false information, because even in October, when the board asked, why was there such a backlog? The person said, look to HR and look to fiscal. They could not get additional information. They never provided information. They never provided any data to support the 15,000 audits because there was none. Our state got commendations from the FBI for our audit programs. We only missed one audit cycle, and that was because I became the CSO and I had to focus on CSO responsibilities versus audit responsibilities. And that is documented in the documents that I responded to the FBI. That is also documented, and I provided a portion of those responses to the board, unfortunately, this morning. But you have absolutely what the responses are to the FBI. I was pulled off of the audit so I can focus on implementing 2 modernization products and also on being the CSO. So everything in the contract, that is false. They were going to always perform the audit as a retaliation attempt. There was no need for the state to enter into a contract for almost $100,000 to train these people that I was training. That was my job. I was responsible to train them. I did train well enough that they were able to perform 2 state audits a couple of months before this contract was signed. And again, they took over my job. We've done everything. I've given the board examples of the audit reports. If you look in the peak performance software, you can see dates of when those audits were created in a digitized manner. Those were all the way dating back to 2010. So all they're doing now is they're configuring the audit cycle. So we are paying them $100,000 now to just reconfigure the audit cycle because of this complaint.
Percy, I'm gonna stop here, only because what you're doing now is kind of providing the rationale for a vote we've already taken.
Okay, thank you.
We already believe that it is contracting out. We're gonna make that recommendation next Friday to the full board. The agency, through Naomi, has heard all of this. They could either respond, facts are facts. They could either respond between now and next Friday. But with what we have here, we have a vote, we have a recommendation, and hearing, and since this was our sole reason for meeting, the motion to adjourn would be in order.
Motion to
I'm
adjourn.
sorry, actually, Sorry,
Sorry.
she mentioned that they had revised the statement of work.
Mhm.
Do we have that most recent copy of the statement of work? Because that might change whether or not I would consider this a privatization. Because if
They
all they're
did
doing is
not, they did not change the statement of work. They tried to hide what the intention of the statement of work was. So the statement of work was to do the audits. When I submitted the complaint, now they said, oh no, they're not going to do the audits. We're just going to train you on how to do the audits, which is what I already did.
so they reduced what the intention to work was, but did they reduce the price that they're paying the contractor for the reduction of work?
No, that is still $100,000 just for them to do what I was doing.
Right.
And
Well,
they're
thank you for
also,
the information.
you're welcome. They're also doing additional work that was not included in the statement of work. The national data, the index audit, that was never part of the audit. The invoice also mentions the same audit twice, but in different words. So the invoice is not accurate. We are paying for services that we do not need to pay for. And there
Okay.
are two separate companies. Peak Performance is the software. CGIS ACE, they are the contractors that knows how to use the software, just like state employees know how to use the software. So there are two separate companies.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate your time and the information, and I would motion to adjourn.
We have a second. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye or raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
Okay. Happy New Year, guys. We'll see you next Friday.